Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm taking a bit of a walk because I got to get myself some cardio. I have been getting out of shape, admittedly, over the past few weeks. I had a good jogging and walking routine going, and I just kind of screwed up all of it. So I'm actually going out walking at midnight, and then I'm going to go for a little bit of a jog so I can get back in better shape. I said I wasn't going to skip a day, and I do not intend to skip a single day ever again. So what I wanted to discuss today was one of the comments that showed up in an interview that I did recently. So I got the Wall Street Journal recently, National Review, ABC, and there was one that I did with Sam Seder at the Majority Report. I enjoyed that interview. I didn't strawman me, didn't make things up, didn't put words in my mouth, asked good questions. It was a pleasure being on the show. And there was a very spicy comment section, I guess both my comment section and his comment section from that video. I'm not going to address the spiciness of that comment section in its entirety, but I will address one point that I think is incredibly important to people regardless of their political viewpoints. It was a big misconception there, and I think it deserves its own video to address. That misconception is as follows. I had mentioned that there was a politician that had called me and listened to what I had to say, and he said the only reason that happened was because I had a YouTube channel with 1.6 million subscribers. So let's discuss the context of this, why it matters, and why I feel it's worth correcting. So I have a YouTube channel with 1 million subscribers, and what I said is that there was someone who was the chair of some committee. He went to get his computer fixed at this one shop. This guy at that shop knew who I was, and he told his that particular politician, who I don't want to say just yet because actually hiring a lobbyist in this state, and I don't want the opposition, who has way more money than me, to get to them first. He said, listen, this is how close your repair was to not being able to happen. This is a serious issue for us. I suggest you call this guy to talk to him about it, because there's a bill in our state. And he's like, oh, really? Yeah. And then he actually called and spoke about it, which I highly appreciated. Now, that conversation was able to happen as a result of that gentleman who ran that computer repair shop knowing who I am, knowing what right to repair is, and then handing my cell phone number to this congressperson or senator. Don't want to really make it clear who it is just yet. And after that happened, he called me. The guy emailed, is like, this guy may contact you. I'm like, yeah, sure, here's my cell phone number. I'd love to pass it on. And I hear where they're coming from with that, which is that, you're not a normal person. You have 1.6 million subscribers. You're able to make a change. Don't pretend that small people can make a change. And I think that there's one point that's being forgotten here. So this is almost 7 years old. I'll link to it in a video down below. About 7 years ago, I did a video about going to lobby at my local legislator. I went with my good friend, Jesse Jones, and I did not know how this process worked. At that point in time, I had about 1,000 subscribers on this channel. As you all know, these videos get around 10 or 40,000 views, which is about 1 to 3% of my viewership. So I had about 1,000 people watching, same viewership that I used to have, which is, 1 to 3%. So you could 10 to 30 people watching each video. I wasn't much of a big deal. And I had a conversation with this gentleman. Everybody that was around me that was in the legislative building that day was wearing ties, nice suit jackets. They knew everybody. I showed up I didn't even know how to tie a tie, so I didn't have a tie, and I took a picture. That was the thumbnail of that video. It was me, the only jackass without a tie, wearing some $9 Uniqlo bargain bin dress shirt that I had just bought for the purpose of that. I was wearing dress shoes that had a hole in them that I don't think I had worn since either a funeral or my high school graduation in 2006, because I just don't have a need for dress shoes. And I showed up there, and I speak to this one gentleman who was actually against the bill. And I asked him why he's against the bill. And then I explained to him, I asked him a bunch of kind of leading questions to try to get him to understand that what the opposition had said was BS, which is that when I replace a fuse or run a wire on a MacBook, I'm turning it into a PC and then misrepresenting it as a Mac to my customer after the PC conversion, which is, it took pretty much all of my self-control from my head to not turn red and start steaming after I heard that. And then at the end of it, I asked him, just out of curiosity, what made you believe him? And he said, well, nobody else showed up. So but now I know, I'm paraphrasing. You'd have to listen to my original video to hear exactly what it was. I'm paraphrasing because it's been 7 years, so excuse me if my memory's a bit fuzzy here. I'll link to the original video down below. But it was something along the lines of, nobody ever came here to tell me otherwise. Now I know better. And then he co-sponsored the legislation. Now that legislation did not move through that year. New York's legislature is a bit of I'll leave how do I put this? Challenging to push new legislative proposals through. I'll leave it at that. But I got someone who was against the bill to change his mind. And he said, well, now I know better. You showed up. Nobody had showed up. Nobody showed up who was for this. You were the only person who walked through my door who was for this. And now I know better. And he ignored everything that he had heard from all the corporate lobbyists that showed up with money, with proper suits, real dress shoes that didn't have holes in them. And he just listened to some, jackass 25-year-old that didn't really know what he was doing when it came to politics in any way, shape, or form. And the reason I mention this is because that happened with 1,000 subscribers. When I did that video, my average video on YouTube got between 3 and 15 views. Nobody cared who I was. And admittedly, that's probably how it should have been. I don't even really understand why people give a shit about me at this point in my life. But beside the point is that it worked. And the reason I say this is because I think there's a lot of people out there that are highly cynical when it comes to causes they care about. There's no point in trying. I'm just a normal person. Nobody's going to listen to me. There's no point in trying. Why bother? Blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the day, there is a big point to trying. Because I think a lot of people assume, well, nobody's walked through this door before. Nobody's made this effort before. And in my case, literally nobody that was for this particular cause had ever walked through this politician's door and just explained it to him. Like that's literally all it took, was somebody explaining it to him. And then he's like, oh yeah, cool, I'm on board. And I think that we've reached a point of peak cynicism and I understand why, to be clear. I'm not criticizing people who are cynical about politics and how things are run in our society nowadays, where people are so cynical, they're not willing to actually visit. They just assume that everything is corrupt. And for sure, there are parts of our system that are corrupt. I'm sure of it. I'm confident that that's the case. But is all of it corrupt? And is it not worth your time to make a visit, to come by, give a call? I get it, we're in the times of COVID. Give a call, give an email, Zoom call, something like that. Just figure out. And because, here's the thing. It may not work. You may actually waste your time. You may be wasting your time. However, there's one thing I can guarantee you, is that if you don't walk through the door, you're guaranteed to be wasting your time. I mean, you're guaranteed to get nothing. If you don't try at all, you're 100% not going to get anywhere versus 99%. And I'll take that 1% chance. I'm happy to take that 1% chance because you never know. You truly never know. So, yes, several of the experiences that I had getting politicians to co-sponsor this legislation occurred back before anybody knew or gave a shit who I was. And it also is one of the things that was discussed was party. So, for instance, many people would not think of Republicans as the people that would support a piece of legislation that benefits the end consumer over a multi-billion-dollar corporation. In Nebraska, Lydia Brash stuck her head out for this. She got laughed at, like literally laughed at by a room full of people. There's Tom Brandt as well. There was a senator who laughed us out of the room, and that senator then lost re-election to Tom Brandt. And Tom Brandt, as soon as he got in office, co-sponsored a piece of legislation that was a right to repair bill. Now, there was also one other comment there. I think it was the difference between left and truly Democrat. When I said left there, I was referring to Ernie Chambers, who at the time, I don't know if this has changed since, but at the time, I remember going to followthemoney.org and figuring, okay, this guy's bought off or something. He had no donations that year, like zero. So, okay, he laughed me out of the room, but at the very least, I respect that he laughed me out of the room because he personally thought I was a joke, not because his donors thought I was a joke. I can at least appreciate that, even if it did hurt my pride, my feelings that I had just been laughed out of a legislative room. His exact words were something along the lines of, strike all contents from the bill and write better luck next year. And he kind of trolled the hearing quite a bit. But usually what I do if someone is a Democrat and I call them left, usually it's based on a combination of some of their positions, but also if I go to followthemoney.org, like, again, you cannot like Ernie Chambers, but there's a difference between Ernie Chambers and, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and those types. You can kind of tell when there is a chance or when there is no chance, just based on a cursory glance at followthemoney.org. So, for instance, there was one person there, I think his name was Bob Christ. He was Bob Christ, who had taken over $3,000 from AT&T. AT&T lobbyist, who was the one that made the over $3,000 in campaign contributions to that senator, was against the bill, and he canceled the meeting that he had with Gay Gordon Byrne and Kevin and a few other people that we were supposed to talk to when I flew there. And it's funny that AT&T lobbyist had given them $3,000. It's really interesting. I mean, it must be a cost of living thing when you're in middle America. You can buy a politician for a lot less than you can in New York. I don't think that $3,300 or $3,800 would buy me a law where I live, but again, it's probably one of the pluses of Nebraska. Lower cost of living and lower cost of bribing your local politicians. Although, of course, the idea of calling that a bribe is purely my opinion, and I would never imply or say that it is a fact that just because 3,000 changed hands that he just so happened to cancel the meeting at that particular time. But, yeah, it is what it is. So I guess the point of this, and that I'm trying to get across, is that you probably have a bigger chance than you think, and more say than you think. And you're right to be cynical. You're definitely right to be cynical when you believe that there's corruption in the system and that people are not listening to you. But there are people that would listen to you. There are people that would go to bat for your issues, and you're not going to know until you start knocking on doors. And it doesn't matter if you're going to a building where everybody's wearing a nice tie and a nice fancy jacket and they know everybody. Because here's the thing I've learned about lobbyists what I've learned is that they're kind of like the cool kid in high school that kind of knew all the different people at all the different tables and knew how to kind of get them together on an issue. It's kind of like that cool kid at high school that, just got along with everybody, the popular person. But at the end of the day, there's a certain level of authenticity that's kind of missing. And the people that you're speaking to often know that. And if you just give them that base level of authenticity and you don't walk in with your preconceived notions that everything is corrupt, you might actually get them to listen to you. This is part of this book, the Jim Camp Start With No book, that I always recommend people read. It's an amazing book. And, he talks about needing a blank slate. And if you don't have a blank slate, he says cancel whatever negotiating session you had. It's that important. You cannot do what you are seeking out to do. You will not accomplish it if you don't blank slate. And I always try to have a blank slate when I'm calling a legislator or walking into their office. It doesn't matter if I agree with them on other issues. It doesn't matter if they said something in the news. It doesn't matter if there's a particular reputation they have. It doesn't matter what party they are. I always blank slate, and I go in there with the idea that I have a chance to change your mind, and I have a chance to change how you vote, and I have a chance to change how you advocate on this particular issue. And sometimes I'm very, very surprised. Sometimes I win. Sometimes the person who had thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from my opposition on followthemoney.org co-sponsors a bill. And sometimes, someone who has no campaign contributions from anybody, any large company on followthemoney.org, who's somewhat left-leaning, literally fucking laughs me out of the room. But I'm not salty. Okay, I am. I'll admit it. It hardened me for the rest. I just thought that was worth mentioning because I know that there are people out there from all sides of the political spectrum that just don't engage anymore. And this is also part of what I discussed in that interview with Larry Sharp. He was saying about 67 to 70% of New Yorkers at the time that he was running didn't vote. Just 70% of the population. That's almost 3/4 of the population are like, just screw it. There's no chance. There's no chance. Why would I bother? And the problem with that, of having zero engagement at all, is that it then creates this feedback loop where you become further and further away from the society that you want to have. And as you get further away from the society you want to have, then you feel like you have even less say over things. And as you feel like you have less say over things, you become more cynical. Being more cynical causes you to not engage. More people not engaging means shittier results. Because again, if you have less than 30% of the population voting, then the people who get elected may not even, they don't necessarily even represent the will of the people. They just represent the will of the people who are not cynical enough to continue to give it a try. So, if anything that I want to get across from this video, and I'll link to the videos I'm discussing below, both the interview that I had with Sam Seder on Majority Report. I'd like to say thank you very much to the folks at Majority Report for having me on, and I'll also link to the video of me from about 6 or 7 years ago, is just turn down your cynicism every now and then. Really, it really just turn it down like a little bit. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be cynical. You most certainly have a lot of reasons to be cynical. I definitely am very, very cynical at this point in the game. But I combine my cynicism every now and then with a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Hope. Or just some of, like, what the hell? Let's see what happens. So, for instance, I'm going to be going to Massachusetts in the next 2.5 weeks. I want to see, if I visit every single repair shop and I have an honest conversation with them, like a nice sit-down conversation on all their issues, talk to them, engage with them, and try and figure out what it would take for them to give a small sheet to their customer that lets them know how close their repair was to not happening, will they actually give it? If they do give that sheet to their customer, will their customer speak to their legislator? And if I show up, will I actually get more people to show up to their legislator? There was one guy in Maine, I remember Joel Steckes. He wasn't really against what we were pushing. I mean, he just said, we have 14 people lined up outside that are against this, and nobody who showed up from our home state. That's kind of weird. He's a Republican in Maine, I'm a New Yorker, so he's probably like, screw this Yankee or whatever. I don't know what it was, but I could feel a little bit of that coming off there. But what would it have been like if I had gotten 50 or 60 repair shops from that state to show up and just line up? Now, maybe I'll get that done. Maybe I won't. I know people that say, listen, this is a waste of time. You can visit these shops all you want. They're not going to show up for you. But here's the thing. I won't know that until I do it. And it's worth the chance for me, because the alternative to that is just being a completely black pill doomer and assuming that there is no way that I can contribute to anything good in the world. And who wants to live life like that? Like, who wants to live believing that the world is completely, hopelessly, totally, 120% screwed? There is nothing you can do about it. There is nothing you could say about it. It is the way it is. My God, I would jump off a bridge if I thought that was the way the world is. And there's no way I'm ready to do that just yet. So I hope that what comes out of this video is a little more a feeling that you have a little bit more say and power than you think you do. And admittedly, there's a bit of self-interest here for me, because I realize myself that my power to change shit at 1.6 million subscribers doesn't come from the fact that I am speaking to these people and as a famous person. That's not where it comes from. My power to change things for the better with this YouTube channel, is going to come from the fact that I don't have 1.6 million cynical people that are so cynical and black-pilled beyond the pale that they're not able to, oh God, I sound like Joe Biden in his 1993 speech. Did I really? Oh man, I forgot. That's a dirty word now. Anyway. Yeah, where was I? Lost track of where I was. Is that the power here doesn't necessarily come from, none of it is really going to come from me just being famous and speaking to people and getting things done because of that. It's because the 1.6 million people that follow me are not completely black-pilled and cynical to the point of, really, you just throw your cigarette on the street? That is such a bum-ass thing to do. Pick this He doesn't even let it out, too. Fucking scum. Oh. Anyway, it's from the fact that there are people watching that are not black-pilled to the point of believing that they cannot change the world at all. Because the thing is, my power in being able to do anything here, it really comes from the fact that people believe that things can change. And maybe if I can get 0.1% of my subscribers to show up at a legislative hearing, that they'll co-sponsor something, or that they'll sign on to something because they'll see that amount of people there. My power doesn't come from me. I'm not doing any of this. I'm not any different than most of you. I'm just louder, and I have more people watching. But at the end of the day, it's the numbers that matter. It's the amount of people I can get to show up that matter. And if every single person here thinks I'm just one person, I can't change anything, then I got nothing. It doesn't matter. You multiply 1.6 million by 0, you still get 0. I have as many subscribers as PewDiePie has. I could have 100 million subscribers tomorrow. If 0 of them show up, that's 100 million times 0 is the same as 10 times 0. However, if I can get beyond people's cynicism and get them to actually show up and get them to write a letter, to show up at a legislative hearing, to vote, to say that I'm not going to vote for you if you don't co-sponsor this shit. And then in the next primary, we're going to be getting rid of you. That's how you get some change. Because then I don't even need 1.6 million subscribers. Hell, I wouldn't even need 16,000 subscribers. If I had that same 1,000 subscribers I had back when I did that video 7 years ago, but 100% of those people were not so cynical that they thought there's no point in trying, hell, I could have 1,000 subscribers, have 1,000 people show up, and I'm good. Anyway, just food for thought. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And yeah, that'll be that. I will link to the 2 videos, and I'll see you all later. That's it for today, and as always, hope you learned something. And I hope that you left this video with a tiny bit less cynicism than you came to it with. I know, it's a big ask nowadays, but try it for me. Try it.